Assalamu alaikum. Okay, so now we have Virginia Woolf. She was born in 1882 and died in 1941. Her full name is Adeline Virginia Stephen. The surname of Woolf she got basically from her husband Leonard Woolf. She is an essayist, a novelist, and a critic. Her mother died at a very early age in 1895 when she was only hardly 12 to 13 years old, and this ultimately led to a mental breakdown. She suffered a lot because of her mother's death. Then, after 2 years in 1897, Stella Duckworth died. She was her half sister, but she was like a mother figure to her. After her mother's death, especially, Woolf was quite close to Stella, and she considered her as her mother. And when she also died, it was quite a chaotic sort of moment for Woolf, and it led to her psychological difficulties and her mental illnesses. Then in 1904, even her father died, and she went through another mental breakdown, which ultimately give a blow to her heart and to her difficult sort of psychological condition. That is why she is even considered to be having a bipolar disorder. And because of that psychological struggle and those psychological issues and problems, she tried to attempt suicide twice, and ultimately she died of drowning herself in river Ouse. So again, a successful सुसाइड अटैम्प्ट. सॉरी, मैंने ऊपर ट्वाइस अटैम्प्टेड ट्वाइस लिख दिया है, सुसाइड है इसमें. Okay, then she belonged to Bloomsbury group or Bloomsbury set. That was a very dominant group during that era, not only in literature but also in different fields of art. This particular group, if we talk about them in general, we associate them with a group of writers, intellectuals, philosophers, and artists. And if we talk about literature, the major names included in this group include Virginia Woolf, John Maynard Keynes, and E.M. Forster, and then Lytton Strachey. The main focus of their study, their research, and the main concern of their writings was with love, aesthetics, and pursuit of knowledge. Woolf was an ardent feminist in those particular times when women were not even given their due rights. They were not considered to be equal to men. And in those times, the contribution of Woolf as a feminist are extraordinary through her literature and through her participation, active participation in different movements. She was also an anti-colonialist, and she did not believe in this colonialism and imperialism sort of things, and she considered it quite chaotic in terms of human values and humanity. She considered it against human but you can say rights, and it was something beyond her perception to belong to a race that itself was a colonialist and an imperialist. She was a humanist in her approach, as we have already seen, and another thing more important is that she was a pacifist. She did not believe in war. She did not believe in any sort of fights or bloodshed or anything at all. She was quite a good person that favored basically anti-war elements, and that considered that everything can be resolved on tables and everything can be resolved through talks and through compromises and stuff like that. We do not actually need to indulge in what you can say bloodshed and war and stuff like that. If we talk about her notable works, among them we have her first novel, that is Mrs. Dalloway, that was published in 1925, and this particular novel details about the day in the life of Clarissa Dalloway, who is the main character of the novel. And the novel is basically divided and based on two short stories. The first one is Mrs. Dalloway in Bond Street, and the second one is The Prime Minister. The Prime Minister was not a complete short story. However, Mrs. Dalloway in Bond Street was already published as a separate short story also. Then we see Impressionism in her works, and by Impressionism we mean a subjective portrayal of reality and incidents through a very few details conveyed. A very subjective, a very personal sort of perception, a very personal and subjective sort of interpretation and understanding of reality and the incidents happening to a person. The description of those particular sort of incidents is termed as Impressionism. And then she is quite a good practicer of stream of consciousness. Her capability in stream of consciousness is quite extraordinary, and she is considered to be one of the masters of this technique. If we talk about the characters of this novel, we have Sir William Bradshaw, Clarissa Dalloway, Elizabeth Dalloway, Richard Dalloway, and Sally Seton. Then we have To the Lighthouse, her most famous novel, and it was published in 1927. It is basically centered on the Ramsay family who visited to Isle of Skye in Scotland in 1910 and 1920. About Woolf's visit, and through the inspiration of that particular visit, Woolf got the idea of this novel, and she basically worked on it later on, and she wrote it through the recollection of her childhood emotions and feelings. And this is among one of the key elements of the novel. Among others, we have the detailed view of adults' relationships, the manipulation of those relationships, and the struggles of those relationships. And then we have most part of the novel is basically written in thoughts and observations. Basically, the active part of the novel is quite minimal. There is no action at all in the play, and there are only a few dialogues. Most of the novel is written through recollection, through memory of the past incidents and events, and those past incidents and events are not written in quite good sequence, logical sequence, hence using the technique of stream of consciousness. If we talk about the themes in this novel, there are quite a good number of themes, and according to different interpretations, it can be interpreted into a huge lot of different themes. Among the most important ones is the complexity of human experiences, how very apparently very simple and very minimal sort of experiences have very deep impacts upon the personality of human beings. Then the second one is the complexity of the human relationships, what kind of relationships human beings have, how manipulative they are, how they work actually, and what kind of struggles are there to be faced in order to run those relationships quite positively. Then it concerns about loss, about subjectivity, nature of art, and then problem of perception, which means that the way you interpret a situation, the way you view a particular scene and incident, it might be varying from the other's perception, from the other's interpretation, and due to this different perception, due to this different interpretation, there might be a possibility that different characters and different people face different sort of problems. The novel is basically divided into three parts. The first one is the window, which extends to 1 day's length. Then we have time passes, which is 10 years long, and then the lighthouse, which is again 1 day long. But the second one, time passes, apparently it depicts 10 years distance, but if we talk about the structure of the novel, this particular part, the second one, is given the shortest portion in the novel. The first one and the last one, which are actually dealing with only single days extension, but they are given more part in the novel's text. If we talk about characters, we have Mrs. Ramsay, James Ramsay, Mr. Ramsay, Paul Raleigh, Lily Brisk, and Charles Densley. I'm not going very deep into these because almost all of you have already read it in your syllabus, so you can go through that. Okay, the third important novel by Woolf is Orlando, which was published in 1928. It is also considered to be a biography, not an autobiography, but a biography of a friend, maybe, or what you can say, contemporary. And it deals with the adventures of a poet who changes his gender from man to a woman, and then under this disguise he meets a lot of literary figures throughout his life, which ranges to a lot of years. And the structure of this particular work is basically like a history of English literature, which is presented in a satiric form. Then we have A Room of One's Own, which was published in 1929, and it is based on two lectures Woolf delivered in 1928 at Newnham College and Girton College at Cambridge. So you can simply sum it up that it was based upon two lectures that were delivered by Virginia Woolf in the Cambridge University. The main idea of this particular work is based upon feminism, women literature, and education. Then we have the fifth one, that is The Waves. It is considered to be his most experimental work because the techniques that she used in this novel were quite different and quite challenging. There are six main characters, which are Bernard, Susan, Rhoda, Neville, and Ginny and Loise. They are basically the main characters whose soliloquies are the main content of the work. Their soliloquies are the most important element. If we talk about its themes, we see the theme of individuality, self, and community life. This particular novel is also considered to be as a literary biography of Virginia Woolf herself. Okay, that's it about Virginia Woolf.